Welcome to Re-Educated TV, where we keep you informed. Hi to all my viewers. We are on the Narrows once more. Tap the like button, subscribe, and feel free to join my Patreon. Much thanks to everyone who have supported me this far, through thick and thin. You are all much appreciated. Now, we have come to the sixth avatar. We will start with Balarama, the seventh avatar. Balarama was long anterior to Krishna, 2,500 years before, or roundabout. In the same manner, the sixth avatar was 2,500 years before Balarama. We have covered the 10th avatar, who was Muhammad, which was in 600 AD. Please note that we can calculate the dates of all the avatars using 600 AD as a mark or starting point. We have covered the 9th avatar, known as Khazar and Asar in Egypt, the 8th avatar, who was Krishna, the 7th Balarama, the 5th Thoth. Now, the 6th avatar was Thamas, or Tamas, or Tammuz, or Tammuz, Adonis and Adonai, among other names, and was once worshipped by the ancient Christians, or Christians, the ancient Jews, Ethiopians, Manichaeans, including the Knights Templar and other Templalism, changed but still of the ancient Mythos of Tammuz, who was before Balarama. It is important to note that in each age, time or cycle was also marked with man's great accomplishments. In the era or age of Tammuz, represented by the twins in Gemini, was the age of stone masonry, or the perfection of cave and stone carvings. The fifth age was the age of the avatar Thoth, marked with the accomplishment of writing that started in the fifth cycle of Mercury. Now, we have already covered in writing part 1 that the letters AD was the name of the ancient god, and before AD it was the number 14. AD later became Adam, where the name Adam came from, and from Adam came Dan, Adonis, and Adonai, and Adamai. AD is 14, but it is also 5, the odd number, the AD number, that later became the odd number, the ODD number. So briefly, AD was the 14 cycles of the moon, and or An was the sun. Together gives you the word Adam or Adon, where the names Adonis and Adonai came from. Also, in regards to the date, AD is allowed to mean Anno Domini. In Latin, translated means in the year of the Lord. But AD is Adonai, who is Tammuz, in the time of Adonai. With all that said, the name of the sixth avatar was given to Adam, the Adam of Eve, that is. Now, the tribe of Dan is the tribe that worshipped the god Dan. The river Jordan means the sacred river of Dan, or the sacred river of the sun. The Tuatha De Danans were of the god Thoth and Dan, the fifth and sixth avatar, or the fifth and sixth Buddha, or the fifth and sixth cycle of Mercury, or the sun. So, Dan, Adonis, Adonai, Tamas, Tammuz, Tam, and Tamas is the same god, once worshipped by many nations and various groups. As mentioned before, the God of the Jews is known by the name of Adonai, but this is nothing but the God of the Syrians, who was called Adonis, or the sun, the worship of who is reprobated under the name of Tammuz. In Ezekiel chapter 8 verse 14, which reads, "Then he brought me to the door of the gate of the Lord's house, which was toward the north, and behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz." So Adonis and Adonai was also Tammuz. It was the same Tammuz who feast the Jewish women solemnized after the manner of the Phoenicians, sitting all night weeping and looking towards the north, and afterward rejoicing and calling it the passing and resurrection of Tammuz. But the festival fell in June, and June was called Tammuz, and June was the month of Tammuz. Therefore, it was celestial. The solstice fell in the time of Ezekiel. In ancient times, June was called Tammuz. The month of June was Tammuz before it later became June. No doubt the festival was equinoctial at one time, but by the precession of the equinoxes, it had become celestial, as calculation shows. Now, let's take a look at some places where the people of Tammuz was found. Mr. Bryan shows that the Gymnophostae Ethiopium are mentioned by Hieronymus, and that they extended from the Indus to the Ganges under the names of Ethiopians and Erythreans. He adds, they resided according to Arion below Carmania, in the mouth of the great river near the island Crocale. Again he says, they worshipped Zeus Umbrius. Strabo mentions the promontory Tammuz and the island Trus. Tammuz was the name of the chief Egyptian deity, the same as Tammuz of Syria. Here we have the Buddhist or the Gymnosophists in the tenant Horus. They hold the coast and from the Ganges. This clearly points out Guzaret, which is Nazareth, of Sirastrine or Palitana. Here we have also the island Crocale and the island Trus. The termination of the first is almost the same as the Agnicula and Hericula, whom was found on the coast of Malabar, and Janicula of Rome, of the mount which had the nomen Janacula in the Saturnia near Palitana, both in Italy and in India, and in the Zeus Umbrius of India. We have Umbri of Italy. Pliny says, at the mouth of the river Indus, two other islands there be called Chryse and Igare. These people have the same name as the Greece in Mount Athos, named in Smith's Classical Atlas. Again he says that there is a country of the Chryseans, whom he places on the east of the upper part of the Indus, the Chrysians. Here mentioned are positively nothing but the Christians or Christians. The country on the northeast of the Sinus Thermasus is called Crossia, and Chalcidae and Pont. The peninsula is called Palatine, Prius, Plegra. We have found the famous St. Thomas of the Portuguese in the promontory Tammuz. So briefly, when the Portuguese stumbled upon these people, they assumed they were of St. Thomas and thought their books to be corruptions. But the Christians of Thomas was long anterior to Europe. Now, according to Ptolemy, there were a river called Manda, a gulf called Colchicus, Sinus, and a place called Maliafar Emporium, or Meliapor, where the Christian St. Thomas was said to have been martyred. But was he not the Tammuz who was slain, for whom the Jewish women made their lamentation, the god who was also called in western Syria Adonis? I have observed that the old man of the mountain was called Iones, Bota, and Dus, and that one of the names of his people was Botanians. This, of course, is the same as Budanians, which are people of the Buddha. It is very clear that a close connection existed between them and the Templars, and we find the Templars adopt for their emblem or distinctive badge of coat of arms a very peculiar cross, which is that worn by the Manichaeans, were the followers, as we are told, of one Budanians, and also of Thomas of India. The doctrines of the Manichaeans are also in many respects the same as those of the Assassins and the Templars. This cross is also found to be the emblem of the Buddhists of India long before. The cross or emblem is of a very peculiar and striking kind. It is red and is mounted on a Calvary. But this cross is really the emblem of the tree of life, the tree Taranis of the Druids. I much doubt the existence of Maine or Menez. At all events, if there were such a person, he was an Indian follower of Buddha or of the Tammuz of India. Tammuz being the sixth Buddha, he was a follower of the god Krisen of the Tammuz. Thomas was also called Krisen. This sect or group had a book called The Treasure or the Book of Perfection. This was probably an imitation of the Sophie Ibrahim of Persia. I am not a Masonic Templar, but I have ascertained that one at least of the symbols of the Masonic Templars is the 8-pointed red cross of the Buddhists and the Manichaeans. This completes the proof that they, the Templars, the Knights of St. John, and others, are a remnant of the same groups or orders of men. I consider this 8-pointed red cross as decisive evidence that Buddhism, Manichaean, and Templeism were identical. That is, Manichaeans, as far as Manichaeans consisted of Gnosticism, for the principles of both were the same, though in later times, in some instances, they diverged as from a common center as they became corrupted or changed. So, it is clear that various nations and groups were worshippers of Tammuz, represented by the twins in Gemini. Tammuz was the sixth avatar, which was the avatar before Balarama. Tammuz or Tammuz was the Buddha of the sixth age or sixth cycle, 2,500 years after the cycle of Thoth. We see that Tammuz was worshipped by various groups. Likewise, in the same manner, the other avatars were worshipped by them. We see that in India, he was Tammuz and Zeus Umbrius of India, the Zeus Umbri of Italy. In Africa, he is worshipped by the names of Adonis and Adonai and Tammuz. He was also known as Christ or Christ. And as we have established, the Templars and other Templeism were and are of Tammuz. He was also the chief Egyptian deity called Tammuz. Can anything be much clearer that the sixth avatar was acknowledged around the world? No, the tomb of Orpheus was shown in Thrace, and a perusal of what Mr. Bryant has said respecting him, I think, must convince any person that there never was a man of his name, but that the Orpheans was a sect or tribe having the religion of the Trinity, and were the Iudi who came from the east, and who were also called Iberi or Iberi, where the word Iberian came from, which means strangers or foreigners. The word Hebrew also came from Iberi, which means strangers or foreigners. So Hebrew mean strangers or foreigners. So briefly, the Iberians or Hebrews were a tribe mentioned in my video, The Atlanteans of Biblical Times, where it mentions the journey of the Gadelians, whose eponymous ancestor was Gadelas, who is contemporary with Moses. They are known as the Gaelic or the Irish Gaels. They were a tribe or sect like the Jews of Syria, expelled from the east, who settled in Thrace and gave the places the same names as the places they left in India. And they brought with them the Trinity, a little altered in the time of Plato, but evidently the same, and female sacrifices, and the worship of, as found on the monument at Adelphi. They were, as we shall see, the Christians of St. Thomas or of Tammuz. It was from the Orpheans that Plato had his Trinity. We have seen that Adonis was the sun. We have seen that he was Tammuz or Tammuz or Tamas. This is in Hebrew tam, which means to connect, to cohere, to embrace, as twins in the womb. As a noun, it is ta'umim, T-A-U-M-I-M, twins, and sometimes tumim, without the letter N and A, which makes of it tumim. Parker says, hence the proper name Thomas, which is interpreted twins by St. John. But it may be said that the word twins equally applies to the Pisces tied by the tails, as to Gemini, and this I do not deny. So, by the ancients, the whole promontory of India, from the Ganges and Gujarat to Comorin, must have been called the promontory of Tammuz. We find various places called Shura or Syria, as Mysore, Mahashura, Coromandel is but the manda or circle of shore. As I have formerly shown, often written Tur meaning both Taurus and Sol, for Tur was shore, and Sur was Tur. Now the sign Gemini preceded Taurus. The twins were the produce of two eggs, and Taurus broke the vernal egg of Siam, well known to Virgil, with his horn. The twins were brought up at Palini. They were in the Argonautic expedition to Colchos, or the Bay of Argo, and Colida in India. Here we may see Virgil's theory, a new Argonautic story for every cycle. The same mythos can be found in adjoining islands of Keelan, or Kandy, of which I have so often treated. Kandy is the name of the central kingdom of Keelan. It seems pretty clear that the island formerly had this name among others. It is said to have been conquered by Rama, king of Oude. The central district consists of what are called the coreless of Oudanur and Tatanur. Now here we see a wonderful assimilation to the British Saxon language, for the coreless are nothing but German circles and have the same meaning whether accidental or not, and the two coreless form what is called the Conde Uda. This is nothing but the county of Judah. A person might mistake it for English. In the island is a river, Mahavali Gunga or Gungu, and the race which inhabits the inmost mountain are called Vedas and Vedas, that is Buddhas. Are the Vedas Yudas? And there is a place called Balticalo. This is Buddha Klo, and their language is the Tamil. There is a town called Palebina or Paletina near the mount called Adam's Peak, where we formerly found the foot of Adam and of Buddha, and Mount Ararat. The principal town is called Colombo, the name of the sacred island of Scotland, as we find Tam on the coast of Coromandel. So on the opposite coast, we find a Tam in the kingdom of Tamala. Keelan or Lanka or Serendipity or Palisimunda or Kandy was a sacred island. We will try and find the circles of the west. Ceres is but another name for Venus Aphrodite and the Urania of Persia and Urania of the country of Ur, or Uri or Uri. Her residence was on the top of the Mount Ida in the island of Creta or Candia. This is Ido, which Parker renders very correctly Idea, or Moya of India. Perhaps there was an Ida above Ilium, as well as this of Creta or Crete or Candia. It was thus the mountain of knowledge, or of Manda or Mundo, of which I shall say more after. In this island, as we might expect, is all the Oriental mythos. It is called Candia, and we have places called Creta or Crete, Ida, Erythrea, Dium, Sulea, Phoenix, Hermium, Croesus, Omphalium, Didymus or Tammuz or Tamas, Chersonesus, Dionysides. The island Christ is adjoining to it. But Ceres had a very remarkable name, elusive. I believe to this mythos she was called Tamios, and from her and this name a plain in Crete was called Tamisa or Tamesa, and from this I suspect, paradoxical as it may appear, that the Tamaros near Plymouth and the Thames had their names Iso Tam. In other words, you had the male Thomas and the female Thomas. Iso is Isis in Egypt. We could go on and on with place names with the prefix and suffix Tam. The Tamil language and its people are also of Tam. Now we see why all these people were persecuted, from the Jews, ancient Christians, Manichaeans, Templars, assassins, and other Templalism, and various other groups by the Romish Church, because they were all of the cycle of the Neros. Some had changes, as suspected over time, but still of the ancient mythos nonetheless. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Take care.